Alright, so Jurrac is really not a deck that I was originally thinking about playing for this event. However, there's a lot of interesting stuff that Jurrac can do, and even beyond the cards that I'm playing in my build, there are a lot of interesting options available to Jurrac. But for my build specifically, I am focusing on my win condition being Jurrac Monoloth's ability to attack everything, but also the flexibility that this deck offers, well, specifically my build of it, I suppose, offers in terms of going into the extra deck and options there. So it is kind of a toolboxy deck. So starting us off, we've got 2 of Jurrac's Therico. This will summon 2 tokens when it is destroyed by battle. Obviously, destroyed by battle effects are going to come up a lot more in the normal rare only format. So this will help to keep you alive, but also the tokens can be important to augmenting the levels for synchro summoning. Also, it is a level 2 monster with specifically 500 attack points, and that is going to be relevant a little later. Alright, so we're playing 2 of those. 3 of Jurrac Monoloth. This is the Jurrac tuner that I have chosen to play. It is a level 3 and has the ability to attack all of your opponent's monsters once each. This will include tokens, including the token summoned off of Lost World, and this can be pretty important for the ability to send more Jurracs from your deck to the graveyard, specifically Jurrac Hera. Then we've got Debris Dragon. So Debris Dragon's only target is Jurrac's Therico. However, because Therico has 500 attack points exactly, it can be summoned off of that, then being a level 2, and with the tokens that can go into either a level 6 or a level 7 synchro monster. There really aren't good level 8 targets for this format. It does have to be a dragon though, so we are playing targets for that. 2 of Jurrac Velo. This card will summon a new Jurrac for you when it is destroyed by battle. So we are playing 2 of those, and then 3 of Jurrac Guaiba that we know from Dino Rabbit format, which will summon another Jurrac with 17 or less from your deck, but it can't attack this turn. So generally you're going into Velo here just because it will float into something else later on, or if you do intend to go into a level 7 Synchro, which there are some very good options for, actually. Multiple of them, but really one that you're wanting, then you can go into Jurrac Monoloth with this as well. Then we are playing 3 of Cyber Dragon in here. So Cyber Dragon was an interesting choice between this and Tenyi that I'll talk about a little bit later when we get into the extra deck as well. But this is a level 5 that summons itself, as opposed to our other free summon, which is summoning as a level 4. So we do get a little bit of option there that the Tenyi package does not offer, and also the Tenyis can't be summoned while you control Cyber Dragon, so I did want that little bit of level variety, as well as, of course, as I mentioned, the extra deck option that we get from that as well being more useful to the goal of this deck than the Tenyi package is. If I were going for a more control-oriented deck where I were trying to play out games regarding advantage and playing for long term, I would go with the Tenyi package instead. So we're playing here 2 of Jurrac Hera. I'm not really sure. This might go to 2, or might go from 2 to 1 rather, because it does have to be a defense position Jurrac that is destroyed to summon this, but it does summon from your hand or graveyard. As I mentioned earlier, there are ways to get Jurracs into your graveyard with Lost World and combining that with Jurrac Monoloth. We'll accomplish that goal pretty quickly. So then we've got 3 of One-Time Passcode. 3 of these, they summon themselves, or rather they summon a security token, and this is what I'm counting as the final 3 of the 19 monsters in this deck. So it summons a level 4 token, but there are no restrictions whatsoever. 2000 defense might actually be good enough for it to just be a guy on the board in this format. Of course, depending specifically on what your opponent has, but if you don't have any other monsters, you've probably got backrow so you can kind of handle whatever else is going on. But this lets you very efficiently go into extra deck monsters on your, even if you're going first, you can generally get into a level 7, because that's just one-time passcode plus Monoloth puts you into it. And then we've got Moon Mirror Shield, and I'll get to why the level 7 is important in the when we get to the extra deck. So just one Moon Mirror Shield. I wanted this to be a 3, but it got limited. So this card, of course, is extremely powerful in this build. Again, going back to our main playmaker, Jurrac Monoloth. Of course, if it can just clear everything and then you can get in with your other monsters, that's pretty great. You're not getting the massive damage that you're supposed to be getting out of Monoloth with it, but it is just clearing everything consistently, and it becomes a very, very difficult card to deal with. Still good, of course, at 1, just not going to be as consistent. Anyway, Rising Fire, this is the card that really convinced me that this deck was playable. This targets a fire monster in your graveyard, equips it, and gives it 500 attack points. So, of course, all of the Jurracs are fire monsters, but we do also have two more interesting fire monsters in the extra deck that we can target with Rising Fire. So, of course, Lost World is going to take 500 attack and defense points off of all of your opponent's monsters, important for attacking over them with Monoloth. If you have this, it essentially makes Monoloth a 2000 attacker that can attack everything. If you're then summoning the Monoloth with Rising Fire, that is a 2500 attack point monster that can attack everything your opponent controls once each. More than that's probably not necessary, though. Though there are some playable cards that need to be attacked multiple times, but whatever. There are 3 Mystical Space Typhoons in here. There is a lot of backrow in this format. Even, in quotes, combo decks like this are going to be playing a lot of spell trap cards. 3 of Book of Moon. This helps you get over things with Monoloth, but it also, of course, protects your monsters, as it normally does. Ring of Destruction, I'm playing 2 of these. So I chose Ring as my removal because of the damage that it inflicts. As I mentioned, you should be dealing a lot of damage with attacking everything with Monoloth, if not just clearing the board efficiently. But Ring of Destruction, in combination with the amount of damage you're already supposed to be dealing, can be really, really good for just closing out games. So Pinpoint Guard was a really interesting choice for me, because it was between this, Oasis of Dragon Souls, and Powerful Rebirth. Oasis of Dragon Souls summons the monsters as worms, not as dinosaurs. So they would lose attack and defense from Lost World, and I don't want that to be happening. Powerful Rebirth is another card that's just a good option. Pretty similar on Powerful Rebirth and Pinpoint Guard. Powerful Rebirth might actually be better, but Pinpoint Guard summons the monster in defense mode, and it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects this turn. So this does give you some interesting options that Rebirth doesn't give you. But also, if I am summoning a monster in this way, it's probably defensive, rather than wanting to just summon something in attack mode and go in, even though Powerful Rebirth does summon Monolith as an 1800 base stat monster, and it does raise the level of the monster it summons by 1 as well, so that can work for or against you depending on what your hand is. But I figure it's generally actually going to be more against me, since my deck is built around having a level 3 tuner. There are a few more things that go into this, but it's pretty much just play whichever one you want in terms of Pinpoint Guard or Powerful Rebirth. Then I am playing 3 of Wall of Disruption. So this makes all of your opponent's monsters lose 800, and of course that combines with Monolith's ability to attack everything to, again, get into a huge amount of damage. So 3 of those, and then a card that this deck specifically is well positioned to play. Underdog. So it's kind of a bad skill drain. It's during your turn, you're negating the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls, and then during your opponent's turn, negating all of the face-up monsters you control. So there are only kind of 2 monsters in here that really care about that. That being Jurrac Giganoto and actually Jurrac Velhito as well, and Psyframe Lord Zeta. But usually most of your effects, when your effects are, monster effects rather, are relevant, that are on the field, is during your own turn. So as long as, with what this card does, is it lets you use your effects on your turn, but doesn't let your opponent interrupt you with theirs on your turn as well. And then you're not really doing anything on your opponent's turn with monster effects anyway, so it does not matter. Then into the extra deck, we've got Chimera Tech, Fortress, Dragon. So there are actually some machine decks that are relevant in this format, and Chimera Tech is a really good tool to clear those. So with gadgets, maybe you don't want to, because if they have multiple gadgets on the board, you can attack into those with Monoloth. But specifically against an actual Cyber Dragon deck, they are going to be going into Cyber Dragon Nova, which is something that Monoloth can't actually attack over. So this can be used to clear that. Of course, if there are a lot of machines on the field, this card is just going to summon as a huge monster as well. So we've got that option there. Jurrac Velhito deals piercing damage. It doesn't. It destroys face-down monsters without flipping them. And since there are actually relevant flip effects in this format, Velhito might actually come up, might be relevant. We'll see when we actually get to the event. It gains attack and defense equal to the original attack of the Synchro materials. So it's probably not going to be that crazy, because it's just going to be a 2000 attack point monster, right? But again, combined with Lost World, that's 2500, and being able to just remove things as long as they're face down can be pretty good, especially when you combine Velhito with that we are already playing Book of Moon in here. Iron Chain Dragon, it's just a level 6 dragon synchro. Jurrac Giganoto gains 200 for each Jurrac monster in the graveyard. So combined with Lost World's ability to send your Jurracs to the graveyard, again specifically wanting to send Hera, that can be really powerful. And I didn't mention with Book of Moon, but you can combine that with Hera, so you can change your monsters into defense mode, so that when they're destroyed they were in defense mode, summoning Hera back to your field. Then Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, which interestingly is a fire monster, and therefore can be summoned back with Rising Fire as a 3000 attack point monster. And your opponent's monsters can't activate their effects during the battle phase while it's on the field, so that is definitely there. Psyframe Lord Zeta is a really, really interesting card. Now, this is one of the cards I mentioned that conflicts with Underdog. But pretty much this is for if you're going first. Like if you go first and you look at a hand and it has one-time passcode plus Monoloth, you can activate one-time passcode, summon Monoloth, and synchro into Psyframe Lord Zeta. This is one of the very few boss monsters that actually has a quick effect to interrupt your opponent that exists in this format. Gaga Samurai and number 70 Malevolent Sin are just for closing out games, pretty much. We've got Gravity Controller, and then Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, which is a 2300 that returns itself to the field, and because its effect happens in the graveyard, it ignores the effect of Underdog if that would be relevant to it. Geonator Transverser, you're summoning the tokens with Sterico to your field, and so, of course, being able to just trade those to your opponent can be really good. Power Code Talker is another fire monster that you can summon with Rising Fire. but also it has the ability to negate the effects of other cards on the field, monsters specifically, and also gain attack points. So Berserker of the Tenyi is just a base attack 3000 monster. Agave Dragon is actually really, really interesting in this deck specifically because it will gain 200 attack for each dinosaur in your graveyard. So the same effect there as Jurrac Giganoto, just with a base stat line of 3000 instead of 2100. It is not a dinosaur itself, so it will be losing attack off of Lost World. But with that attack gain, by the time you are making a Link 4 monster, probably enough to make up for that. But also the other types are actually relevant. So, of course, there could be dragons. It is the graveyards, both of them. So you might have 2 dragons in your graveyard from Debris Dragon and the Synchro monster that is being summoned with Debris Dragon. And that would be 200 damage to your opponent. If your opponent has dragons, then that is going to only add on top of it. And it isn't selective. It is just all of the effects that apply activate. And then Sea Serpents. So if your opponent is playing Sea Serpents, and of course Phantasm Spiral being a Sea Serpent deck, this interestingly checks the number of Sea Serpents on the field rather than in the graveyard. So it will actually count the Phantasm Spiral token in that for making all of your opponent's monsters lose 300 attack for each of them. And then Worms, well, it is a worm itself, but it's counting for the graveyard here. You'll gain 400 for each. I'm not really sure how much that's going to be relevant, the life gain there, but the important thing is that these are types that you would actually see, especially with the dinosaurs and Worm because of the Tenyi line. So that is a reason to play the Tenyi line, but I'm just not expecting to go into Agave Dragon very much at all. It just is very interesting that it does have synergy with this deck. So again, I'm playing a very small number of the Jurracs, but there are other Jurracs that are very interesting and potentially viable in this normal rare format. Jurrac Titanimal, the boss monster, has limited protection on it, so it might actually be pretty good in this format. It just can't be special summoned, and so I built this deck very specifically to try to have, with as much consistency as possible, a strong opening hand. And having boss monsters that can't be special summoned and aren't really going to do anything in my hand isn't great for that, whereas with Jurrac Hera, it does special summon itself when a defense position Jurrac is destroyed. By battle only, but when a Jurrac is destroyed, and by battle is kind of a lot of the way that destruction is going to be happening, I think, in specifically this format. So if you are opening, a Hera and a Storiko, then you can, of course, get that Hera into rotation from that. I've talked long enough about this. I will be probably posting about how this goes on Twitter. I might post some games if that is something that people would be interested in seeing. So that's all for now.